Welcome to the podcast. It's my favorite CPA, and it's your host, CPA Dan Hodges. Today, we have a special guest, and it's a longtime friend of mine, Zach Berger, who is a massage therapist. And today, we are going to talk about the business of massage and the business of being the son of an entrepreneur.
Exactly. So, like Dan said, my name is Zach Berger, and I am the founder of Zachary Berger Massage Therapy, also known as ZMT LLC. I practice out of New Haven, Indiana. For a few years, I was working at a massage franchise, but now I'm on my own as an entrepreneur.
Nice. Now, is that a big transition to go from being, an employee somewhere to the land of self-employment?
I would say so. I would say it's not as big as some people think. I think a lot of people are hesitant to make that jump because they don't know exactly what it entails. Could be a lot of different things. For different industries, it could mean more. But for me, it was definitely a welcome change. So I worked at a franchise where it's a W-2, so very hands-off. And the kind of agreement that you come to at a place like that is I don't want to do any marketing. I don't want to worry about any customer complaints. I don't want to do any laundry. I want to leave. I don't want to withhold any taxes for myself. I don't want to have to think about that. I just want to slip a paycheck every 2 weeks, and I want to slip at tax time that tells me what I'm supposed to tell the government. And so, it's very hands-off, but the thing about that is...
A whole lot less to worry about,
exactly,
right?
Yeah. So it's really nice in some ways, less responsibility. But the thing is that you trade that off. So your paycheck, what that looks like, they keep a lot of that money for doing all that work, and it's a lot of trouble. Like, it makes sense, a lot of people they have to hire people to do the stuff
the laundry
that you don't want to.
and the cleaning,
exactly,
and the appointment setting, and the marketing, and
and the advertising, and bringing people in, and when people aren't happy, that you don't have to worry about it. It's just the front desk's problem.
Right. So, I remember when I was at the big firm, and all I had to do was worry about just making sure the work got done, and if a customer didn't pay, it didn't matter.
Yeah, you still got paid.
I got paid.
Yeah,
I got paid.
So and
that's I had really worries. Nice. They're just different worries.
Right. So now the responsibility of marketing is mine. The responsibility of laundry is mine. The responsibility of taxes and thinking about what that entails and different setups and different configurations for taxes are different. And it's a lot more responsibility. But the nice part is that my paycheck doesn't go through anybody before it gets to me, right? So nobody is deciding how much I get paid besides me.
Oh, I bet you too. You probably have more say over who you work with.
Absolutely.
Because if you're at someone else's shop, they're like, here's your appointment, here's your calendar for the day.
Exactly.
A week. And when you're on your own.
So I walk into work when I was over at the franchise. I would walk in and look at the schedule, and it was basically whoever they told me I was going to work with, I had to be okay with it. Unless it was someone I had a previous problem with, you don't get a whole lot of say. And that's in general true about being a massage therapist. You don't want to be too hesitant to work with any person of any type.
It's a very personal business too.
It is, yeah.
I bet you hear all kinds of things about people's life stories.
Oh, yeah.
And then the next week you're getting it's like the gossip. You're getting what's going on in their life since last week.
Yeah, definitely. The day to day and the week to week, play by play. But now that I'm working on my own, I have a lot more say so. Especially because I'm setting up the advertising. I'm
where you market,
exactly,
who you market for.
Yeah, what kind of interests they have. An age range is a really big one. So
And with today's marketing techniques,
Yeah.
you can probably get laser tight on, like, I would like,
exactly, yeah, within 7 miles of
here's my
Portland.
ideal customer.
Exactly, yeah, and then basically all you have to do is wait, and they get in touch with you. But then, at the franchise, at that point, the company takes care of everything, and then the first time you see the person is when they're in the room.
They're a customer already.
Yeah. But the way that I have to do it is I find out that someone is interested in a massage.
You got to screen them because they might have a medical history that's not compatible.
And that's something that, they do think about at the franchises, of course, like everywhere. If you're,
they have a process.
Exactly. But if you're working on your own, you have to figure out what your process is. Right. You have to do the research to say, is massage allowed with fibromyalgia?
Right.
Is massage allowed if they've had a surgery last week? That kind of thing.
It's a lot of responsibility because if somebody walks out not feeling good.
Yep. It's not your GM's problem.
Right.
It's your problem.
Whew.
And it could be a complaint to the Better Business Bureau or
some licensing body
exactly.
or who the heck knows.
Yeah. So it's more responsibility, but the pay, I definitely like that better. For sure.
Do you?
Yeah.
I think the idea of having a little bit more control over, in the land of self-employment and being a business for yourself, just the idea of where do I market, what kind of customer do I want, what hours am I going to keep, just more control over the controllables.
Absolutely. Yeah. And even working in a franchise, they ask you, instead of telling you what your schedule is going to be, which is,
okay.
It's a lot different than some other places. Like most places, when you apply, they say this is a 9 to 5, Monday through Friday.
You're going to be here at 8:59. You're going to leave at.
Sometimes
you're going to stay until at least 5:01.
Yeah, exactly. But sometimes later, and you don't really have any say over it. Whereas now, basically, if I find something that I could be doing, setting up some advertising or working through intake forms, paperwork.
Non-productive, non-revenue time.
Yeah, I could do it at midnight. It could be 4 o'clock in the morning.
You don't have to stay chained to your desk until...
Exactly.
Yep.
Which I really like that. Yeah.
How'd you get into this line of work?
So when I was in college a couple years ago, not college for massage, but college at Ball State in Muncie.
Okay.
I had an injury where I broke both my ankles.
No kidding.
Yeah. And
that's crazy.
It was crazy.
Can you walk if you break both your ankles?
With the boot, yeah. So I was wearing 2 boots, and it was a lot of this kind of thing, a lot of like holding onto counters and stuff.
Weeble wobble.
Yeah, exactly. And the doctor that I went to, they referred me to a chiropractic office where they did free, included massage with every session. So you get your adjustment, and then you move into the next room. They take your blood pressure, and then the best part, they do the massage. Exactly. Do
you think that made a difference to your outcome?
Yeah. So just being exposed to it that way, and not being obligated to pay almost $100 for a full session just to get one experience. With them including it, like it really opened my mind or opened my eyes to
what that can do.
Exactly, and how it feels.
All fits together with medicine and chiropractic.
Exactly. Yeah. And so then a couple years later, I just started thinking, oh, that's right. I was thinking maybe I could be a massage therapist
at that time.
And then and went to school about 4 years ago. Started 4 years ago, 4 or 5.
Okay.
And that's it.
Wow. So, interesting story. Now, you also, tell me a little bit about your background. You grew up in Indiana? Or?
Yeah. So I was born northern Indiana. I've only lived in Fort Wayne or New Haven for a couple years now, so still getting kind of acclimated to the environment here. But used to living in northern Indiana. And
you don't mind the snow and the...
to be honest, I love it. Like, I hear a lot of people complain about it, but for me, when it's snowing, I couldn't be happier.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Which I know is
It's a little weird.
yeah. It's
compared to Arizona.
exactly yeah.
And you have family in Arizona.
I do.
Right?
Yeah, Arizona. But most of my family's still here, so I'm still here.
I like Indiana.
Yeah, and this
We have
is
four
where-
seasons.
Exactly. Yeah, the spring and the fall.
Which in Arizona, like they have one season more or less, don't they? One and a
pretty
half.
much, yeah, and a rainy season,
Rainy.
which is something that we don't quite get as much.
That doesn't sound real good to me.
Yeah. So, but Indiana has always been. This is where I was born, and my dad had a electronic engineering shop.
So you come from a entrepreneur business background.
Absolutely, yeah. And for as long as since I was born, that was what he was doing. Was always being his own boss and the owner of a business that employed 10 to 20 people at any time.
Nice.
Yeah, and.
Did you work in your dad's business?
Yeah, I was gonna say I was one of those employees.
Because for all of you out there, if your family is not in business, I grew up in the family-owned business, and if you grew up in a family-owned business, everybody in a family-owned business knows that everybody in the family helps in the business in some capacity, even if you don't work in the business. Now, there's also those of us that have worked in the family business.
Yeah, when I was in, I think. Fourth or fifth or sixth grade, something like that, was when I started working at my dad's place. And it really opened my eyes because he had employees who were just doing basically repetitions of manufacturing different things like
Not on a bolt, but more in the electronics world, like not
soldering.
soldering.
Exactly, and testing, a lot of testing. So. Those responsibilities are, I think, kind of typical in that industry, but I got to see the fact that my dad was
the whole administrative side and the whole back end of things, which is different than just the front end.
Yeah, so giving someone a job and saying, okay, here's 200 of them, put this piece here and this piece here, and make sure it lights up. That's one thing. But to be on the other side of it, where you have to be the one designing the prototype, designing the example that people follow, that's completely different. It's very nebulous. It's like...
And the weight's on your shoulders. Because a lot of the reasons.
Well, exactly. Yeah, so if you make a mistake in that part of the process, and then your employees make 500 of them, then what
they're all out there, and now you have failures and
Yep.
maybe something, hopefully not leading to a fire, but
could be.
with electronics.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So
that business comes with a little bit of risk, I would think.
Yeah.
More than average.
Sure.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Anytime you're self-employed, there's a little bit of risk. I used to say, I was going to say this earlier, not to get us off track.
No.
When you're an employee, you think, man, if I were just my own boss, that'd be great. Like, I wouldn't have to do anything. Like a check would just come in the mailbox. It's mailbox money. That's what self-employment must be. But the reality is, being self-employed and being a business owner is you go from having one boss who tells you when to come in and what to do to now you have like 10 bosses or 20 bosses.
Yeah.
The customer is still the boss. Then you have employees who, they're kind of bossing you around too. Like, hey man, I need my paycheck.
Sure,
I need these days off.
Retirement plans.
Yep.
Like they it's totally reasonable for them to expect that kind of thing.
Benefits. And they're working. They're working. And then you have regulation, which would be the law saying you can have to do this and you can't do that. Of course, so that's your boss. And then the bank becomes your boss. Mm-hmm. The tax agencies, they become your boss. And so you go from having one boss to many bosses in the land of self-employment. Yeah. And that's the backside, that if you've just been an employee and if you come from just an employee family, then you just don't see that side of things.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing, is that there's kind of two sides to that coin. Like, you have all these bosses, you have all these responsibilities, but in the end, there's really no one who's on your butt saying, is this done yet? Do you have this? Have you thought about this? So
for some of the administrative stuff, absolutely.
You have to think of those questions. Right. You got to be asking yourself. Yeah. You got to be. Is
all your paperwork ready for your taxes every month, all year long, and every week? And,
exactly.
And that kind of stuff.
It becomes a lot.
So there's a lot of things too when you're in business or self-employed that go on the back burner because the customer comes first, right?
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of self-employed in business owners, they're always putting their personal stuff on the back burner and taking care of everyone else. And then sooner or later they find that that kind of backs up on them a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just my observations.
Yeah.
It's a lot of little stuff like even estate planning and that kind of stuff. As business owners, we're always thinking about day to day and week to week, but maybe the bigger picture things we should be thinking about.
Years down the road, maybe I should start implementing something now so that when I really want to do that I'm all prepared and not scrambling to do whatever it is,
Absolutely.
You might want to be buying a building, but you got to think about how do I get a license to practice, like to own a massage establishment. So like having your license to practice massage is one thing.
You can't just hang up a shingle and go.
Unfortunately not. That would be pretty nice though.
Just collect that money.
Yeah. And so there's a ton of considerations, definitely.
Very nice. Well, this is interesting. And I have another question for you. Now, we don't have to talk about your specific numbers. We can just talk about the industry and the profession.
Sure.
But, being a CPA, I'm just constantly curious.
Yeah.
There's money in massage?
How much people are bringing in? Yeah, absolutely. And there's definitely a conception surrounding massage that it's for people who want to make some money. Yep. And that is true. But there are things that kind of dwindle that number back down.
Like expenses, overhead.
Yeah, so it's easy to tell. It's like, for instance, I tell my clients, okay, we did an hour massage today. That's going to be $80. So
like, what?
Yeah, so they're like, wow, you just work an hour and you have $80
you make $80
in your pocket.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, and that's not true.
No.
So you got to pay for your rent for one thing, or if you own your own building, you got to pay the mortgage.
Yep.
But even if you're not, even at a franchise, like I mentioned earlier, they like to keep
right.
a lot
They're
of
gonna keep a cut.
They're doing most of the stuff.
Yeah.
So at the end of the month, you might be making a good amount of money, but you have to think about all of the expenses first.
Today and the future.
Yeah.
So you have things like rent, you have things like supplies, you have things like equipment, you have things like labor, technology and software for appointment setting and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I can only imagine. And then don't forget the tax man. And then
Exactly.
a profit would be nice too, right? So there's probably at least, a very, what some people might, as compared to like a technology business, they might say, well, that's a simple business, but there's still at least 8 broad brush, at least 8 major parts here of things we got to be thinking about.
Yeah.
That the fee you collect, it gets spread a lot of different ways.
Yeah, that $80 starts getting put in a lot of different envelopes, so to speak.
Right.
And then eventually you're like, oh, okay, well, I
have something left to live on.
Yeah. So, well, and the other expense is a time expense, right?
True.
So you might get $80 for the session that you have hands-on with someone.
Yep.
But you got to think about, or you got to realize that the amount of time that you've spent with that person leading up to that session could be up to an hour, like just messaging back and forth saying, here's
in our world we call that administrative burden. Yeah. It's like all the setup time.
Yeah, and you're not getting paid, you can't charge them for it.
Not
so
really.
That $80,
it's got to cover that
as well.
Good point. Yeah, that's a soft cost that a lot of people probably just never think about.
Yeah.
Nice. So I know we're kind of drawing to a close here, but is there any stone unturned, anything that you want to put out there for the world to know about your life and the business of massage?
Well, yeah, I think the biggest thing is something that's really helped me is that it sounds like a lot of work and it sounds like a lot of responsibility, but there are ways to minimize some of that labor, which, for instance, like hiring somebody, so... For instance, I don't know much about tax compliance. I don't know a whole lot about... I took an accounting class or a couple of accounting classes, but even so, I don't trust myself to...
do bookkeeping.
Exactly.
They used to teach bookkeeping in high school. I don't think they really do anymore. There's no time.
Yeah, I
They
mean,
barely teach cursive in grade school.
yeah, it seems unnecessary, I guess, in this day and age. But so yeah, hiring people to do some of those things for you, like,
Experts.
yeah, exactly. So with the bookkeeping, you can hire my favorite CPA, Dan Hodges here. And also CEUs, continuing education units. For instance, I've taken CEUs to learn how to do more massage stuff, like lymph drainage.
Yep.
And
That can be pretty deep and
yeah,
technical,
yeah,
I can imagine.
definitely prenatal massage and
I think we could probably talk for at least 30 minutes about each of those subjects, because the lymph system kind of runs in parallel with the, what do you call it, the blood system.
Exactly,
Circulatory.
Exactly, yeah, definitely. So I've taken, CEUs for massage, and in other industries you would take classes that pertain to your industry. But one of them that I took that was really helpful was your class, which was my favorite CPA course. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that was,
It opened your eyes to the world of business and different ways you can be taxed.
Yeah, absolutely. And how, that's the thing, is like when you get your W-2 in January or February, I'm not sure when they.
Yep.
Yeah.
January, February. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
When you start receiving that in the mail, it's just a bunch of numbers, and it doesn't really matter. But once you're the one who has to submit that and say, yes, absolutely, this is all correct, that's a lot more pressure. And even though I'm not the one submitting those documents, even just learning about that stuff and being able to converse with you about it, it helps a lot.
And the wisdom and the knowledge of the training course up front, and knowing that even though you're in business, even though you're self-employed, you could be taxed this way, or you could be taxed this way, or you could be taxed that way. I'm taking it, that made a difference to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I was first starting, I just thought, what do I really, I'll just use H&R Block, or, right. I'll just use something like that.
What do I need an accountant for?
Exactly.
Right.
But then you find out later, even though I didn't intend to do it myself necessarily, learning some of those things helped me to come to you or someone else and say, listen, tell me more about this thing. I'm interested in.
Most accountants don't have time to talk about all that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, to have in the cloud, on demand ability to be able to educate yourself has made a difference. I appreciate the shout out. Thank you. Thank you very much for that.
Absolutely.
So great. Well, this is Zach Berger, and I just want to say a couple things as we wrap up here. Of course, if you got comments, drop them below. And if you would, hit that like button, comment, share, and subscribe. And if you're on YouTube, hit the bell. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.